Hi guys. So today's video is going to be a list of my favorite young adult books from the year of 2018. There are actually a good amount of books on this list, so I'm just going to jump right into it, and the first ones I want to talk about would be both Scythe and Thunderhead by Neil Shusterman. Many of you probably are already aware of the setup for the story, but the idea is that it's our own world in the future, and the only threat to mankind is overpopulation. So now there are these individuals for work called Scythes who go around and kill people. I freaking love this book. I love Scythe. Thunderhead was, I thought, fantastic as well. And if you are looking for a book that is futuristic but still has what I would call world building in it, then this is the book for you. Another favorite of this year is one that I just read in November, and that would be Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. This book follows our main character named Spencer. She's very extremely feisty. She's in people's faces a lot, but she has good reason, and that is because when she was a child, her father, who was a pilot, and pilots are a big deal in their world because they live on this other planet, they live underground for the most part because they get attacked by these aliens and they get attacked from the sky, and so pilots are their only means of defense. And her father, who was once considered a hero for being a pilot, one day abandoned his crew. Then he was branded a coward, and she, Spencer, therefore was branded the daughter of a coward. It packed a punch, I'd say, emotionally, more than most of the young adult books I've read recently. Plus, there is tons of action. There's so much action, and it is super fast-paced. I'm gonna take a quick detour from my usual favorites and talk about a genre that I pretty much never read, but man, did I really like these books, and that would be Love and Gelato and Love and Luck by Jenna Evans Welch. Pretty much everything that I enjoy is sad or sorrowful in some way. The more somber it is, the more I'm like, oh, this is beautiful. That was not the case with these books. These books follow two different characters who are friends, so they're companion books, but you should probably read Love and Gelato first. And in Love and Gelato, we follow a girl whose mother dies, and she moves to Italy for a summer to live with what she's assuming was her biological father. And as the story progresses, she is finding out more about this man and her mother's relationship, how they came to know each other, how they came to fall in love, and along the way, she might be making new friends and falling in love herself. Love and Luck tackles a bit of a different topic. Rather than finding out about falling in love, you are kind of dealing with heartbreak. Our main character is anyway. Even though these are not my typical kinds of reads, I still found that the emotions that they evoked for me they really evoked emotions in me, and anytime a book can do that, I gotta give it props. The next two books that I really loved would be Strange the Dreamer and Muse of Nightmares. Every time I talk about these books, I describe them as fairy tales. They're like reading a modern fairy tale. Not modern day in the setting, but just a modern writer writing a fairy tale, and somewhat grim because there are very dark moments and some really dark things that have occurred, but there are also moments that are just so over the top, and everything that's happening is so luscious and beautiful, and so it's got a lot of a mix of those kinds of things that I find are really prevalent in fairy tales. The premise for the story is kind of bizarre, but essentially there is this city that magically was lost to humans. They know the city existed, but they kind of think it existed just in folklore and wasn't actually real. But our main character, Laszlo Strange, is thinking, no, this place was real and I'm going to find it. And so that is kind of the setup. I have absolutely no problem saying that this is not the duology for everyone. That's of course the case with any book, but these two books are written with such a flowery writing style, and there is a bit of insta-love in this that I completely understand if it's not for everyone. What I will say is those two things normally don't appeal to me whatsoever, but I ended up finding that the themes that this duology took on were themes that I don't normally see in books, and the main one would be that violence isn't always the answer. The amount of compassion that is shown to various characters throughout the story I thought was really beautiful, and I am not a violent person in real life, but when I'm watching an action movie or a show, or I'm reading an action scene in a book, I'm for sure like, come on, get him, and I just like kill him, and I get really, you're like, hate that guy, kill that guy. And these books and the characters in these books, rather than having that mind mentality, often are instead trying to help those who are their adversaries, and I mean, my first instinct was like, well, just get rid of them. But then the way it was done, the way things play out, I just found to be a theme that isn't shown often in books, especially in fantasy books that are so kind of filled with our heroes saving the day by shoving a spear down somebody's back or something, you know, like there's a lot of violence, and that is often a means to an end. That is how the story plays out, and that's how the good guys win, and wasn't necessarily the case in these books. The next favorite from this year would be A Shadow of the Fox by Julie Kagawa, and this is a Japanese-inspired fantasy story. Our two main characters, Yumeko and Tatsumi, are kind of thrust into this adventure alongside one another, and the first part of the book you're getting introduced to these two main characters, and then the story kind of really picks up when these two characters cross paths and then have to go on this adventure, and it's a traveling story. And the reason I kind of always talk about the fact that it's a traveling story is because not everybody is into traveling stories. Not everybody likes following characters as they are going along from point A to point B, and the reason usually being that traveling stories often feel a little meandering. In a way, it kind of sort of makes the book feel like it's broken up into short stories. It makes it feel very episodic. You can for sure visualize it as a manga or an anime or any kind of a cartoon or visual thing, because usually those kinds of things are broken up into episodes. And so when you are reading through this, you will find that within certain chapters they're going to have to battle this, or in certain chapters they're going to have to figure out what's going on in this mysterious place. And I loved it. I also loved the main characters. Yumeko is this happy-go-lucky, very naive girl, and Tatsumi is somebody who has experienced a lot of violence, but he's very reserved and he has a mission, and that is his goal, is his mission. And so these two characters are so different, and seeing how they interacted I found very entertaining. Next up we have the book And I Darkened by Kirsten White, and this is a historical retelling of Vlad the Impaler, but it's a gender swap. So instead of it being Vlad, our main character is a female named Lotta. There's not a whole lot else to say about the plot. That is kind of the plot, that it's a Vlad the Impaler retelling, but I found this story to be told in an interesting way. We follow Lotta and her brother from the time that they are born throughout their young lives, and Lotta is not necessarily a character that you're like, she's so fantastic and nice and has a great heart. She's not like that whatsoever. But the world is a somewhat harsh world. She has had a somewhat harsh upbringing, and she's kind of a product of her life. And weirdly enough, by contrast, her brother is kind of filled with the different characteristics that Lotta is missing. So he's a little more compassionate, he's a little bit sweeter. And the last favorite of the young adult genre would be Ash Princess by Laura Sebastian. This book follows a young character who, she is the heir to a kingdom that was conquered, and she was kept alive to be used as someone to beat and publicly torture in front of her people if they ever try to rebel. And so her life pretty much sucks. However, this main character named Theo is given an opportunity to try and better her life, and potentially along the way also help lead her people in a rebellion. And so she takes this opportunity, and I know that that's not the most original plot, but I really enjoyed this book. I kind of couldn't really put it down. It was very non-stop. It was filled with a lot of intrigue. It was filled with really interesting character relationships, some of which you, as somebody reading the story, are like, oh, that one's not gonna work out well. But when you try to put yourself in the character's shoes, you're like, oh, man, you just feel kind of bad for her for the situations that she's in. Anyway, that is it for my favorite young adult books of 2018. Please feel free to let me know what books you absolutely love. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts were on them. As always, don't forget to check out the charity Save the Children. I always have the link to it in the description bar down below. Anybody who donates to them will automatically be entered into a giveaway. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.